So I'll offer just a brief introduction, reminder about Soul Matters and what it is, since you'll hear me mention it. Soul Matters is a Unitarian Universalist theme-based collection of monthly topics for worship and small group discussion. And every year they pick an overarching theme as well as a monthly. So their overarching theme this year is living love through the practice of ... For September, living love through the practice of invitation. That's our month. And a little background and a reminder that in June, at General Assembly, our annual denominational meeting, delegates from UU congregations, including ours, voted by 80% to pass changes to Article 2, known more as our UUA covenant or as our purposes and principles. And if you look in our hymnal, this is our old Article 2, covenant, purposes, and principles. It now reads, as Unitarian Universalists, we covenant congregation to congregation and through our association to support and assist one another in our ministries. We draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love, capital L. Then we have a list of 6 shared values that are echoes of our purposes and principles: interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, and justice. And we'll hear more about these, and later in the fall, we will hear from our First Parish delegates about these changes to our UUA covenant and these shared values. But this morning and this month, I want to center on our center, the spirit and the spiritual discipline of love. And as we begin a new congregational year, to think about what is the invitation we are offering to newcomers, to one another, to our larger world, as we practice the spiritual discipline of love. And what invitation are we looking for? Debbie Thomas is right that many denominations, including ours, have been concerned that the church is dying as other activities and demands and types of community compete for people's time and energy, and we see smaller and smaller numbers attending consistently on Sundays. And COVID only accelerated that trend. But Thomas is also right that we human beings haven't changed all that much over the history of our species, and that the hopes and hungers and the losses and loves that have brought people to their knees for time immemorial are still alive and well. And our souls still long for coherence and for awe, for connection and for meaning, for truths that we can trust. So our invitation as a religious community has to speak to these longings and articulate how we address them, how we offer hope and comfort and wonder and connection and meaning to what matters most to our souls in ways that are true and trustworthy. Very small task. Whenever I have asked you over the years, what keeps you here? What do you say? There you go. Community. So it's very important, I always respond, that we articulate what kind of community we are nurturing and sustaining here, as we say in the first line of our covenant, because there are lots of communities out there. We can gather around everything from sports, yoga, pets, gardening, walking, singing, baking, drinking, book discussions, political organizing. There are all kinds of communities that we can belong to that speak to something that matters to us. So First Parish is a very specific kind of community, a Unitarian Universalist religious community, a spiritual community grounded in the practice of covenant, a set of commitments, promises, vows, as Rumi said. And we will fail at times, but we can call ourselves back and each other back to our covenant, to our community, by reminding one another and holding each other accountable to our center. We do not have to hold the same theological beliefs, but we do share those core values and commitments articulated in our UUA and First Parish covenants, beginning with the spiritual discipline of love. And a covenantal community centered on the practice of the spirit of love is, by definition, invitational and welcoming and hopeful and transformative. It sings, "Come, come, whoever you are." This sounds delightful and sweet, but you know what? And we know it's hard. It's really hard, especially in these troubled times. Maura gave us a wonderful example in her chalice lighting. There is a climate of distrust and disinformation and division, isolation, and super busyness that makes inviting people into a beloved community a struggle. And it's really hard to trust now, I think. It's hard to know who to trust and what information to trust. It's hard to share something that we need and want to be comfortable with, and we want it to be familiar, and we want it to be ours. It's hard to share that. It's hard to compete with all the other things happening in our busy lives and the busy lives of other individuals and families, and it is very hard to center living into a spirit of love when so much hate and fear is being slung around us. Hate and fear that is being slung at some of our most deeply held commitments to love and thus members of our community. Our LGBTQIA+ folks, our Muslim and Jewish heritage folks, our science-oriented folks, our women folks, our BIPOC folks, our earth-centered and our earth-loving folks, all our folks. So that's why it is essential that we are clear about our purpose, our mission, so that we can be clear about our invitation. So I'm going to ask you in your pews to take a couple minutes and share with one another what you think our invitation is beyond community. Go. Finish your thought. Finish your thought. What'd you come up with? Hospitality. Hospitality? Discernment. Acceptance. Trust. Listening. The freedom to be yourself. Safety, a safe space. Belonging. That's a good one. Foundation. Any other words that you haven't heard that came up? Family. Friendship. Yeah, very important. Comfort. Accessible. Spirituality. Service. A challenge. How do we bring our community, how we take this invitation in here out there? Yeah. Music. We're not playing the balloon game today. We played a balloon game at the standing committee retreat yesterday. Get ready. What? Meals, food, sustenance, right? What? I'm sorry? Coffee. Yes, very important. We all have our communion. We all have our different types of communion. Okay.
What would you say?
I'm about to tell you. And no, we did not set that up. So, here's how I articulate our mission, our purpose, and what we say in the welcome each week. The answer as to why we gather as a covenantal community. We invite people to worship, to lift up and honor, celebrate, commit to what we trust is worthy of our deepest loyalties and our commitments, what we would live for, struggle for, put our lives on the line for. That's what worship means, folks. That's what worship means. How do we embody community in worship? And what kind of community do we strive to embody in worship? Well, among other things, one that celebrates joys and acknowledges sorrows, and that accompanies people through their entire lives. One that names and celebrates our values and our promises to live into a spirit of love, and we do it through ritual, and we do it through music, and we do it through song, and we do it through words and prayer and meditation and silence. But deeper than that, in our worship is a commitment to come together and embody that love through the practices of interdependence and equity, pluralism, transformation, generosity, and justice. Whether you are here for the worship or not is not the point. Worship is where it all begins. Second, mutual care. We invite people to be cared for, and we invite people to care for others within and beyond our congregation. We accompany one another through joys and sorrows, not just once, not just when they happen, not just the wedding, not just the funeral, but through the years. We accompany each other through the whole story of our lives. This is one of the greatest privileges of being a longtime minister. I have witnessed not just the heartbreaks and the losses, but the healings and the transformations as well, the recoveries and the renewals. I have watched a child grow into an adult, and I have blessed their comings of age, and I have blessed their marriages, and I have blessed their children. We have accompanied one another through losses and tragedies and endings and failures, and we're still here. And we have accompanied each other through the hard work of life, continuing on and learning to find joy and hope again, tinged as it may be with the bittersweet. I have listened to and held stories of failure, of confession, of forgiveness, and of unexpected grace. Through mutual care, we learned that no one moment, even the most earth-shattering, tells the full story, and that we can and will be surprised by life, by love, by hope, and by grace. We gather for faith formation, for spiritual growth and exploration, for the deepening of our commitments to what we believe is true and trustworthy and life-giving. To be reminded that revelation is not sealed, that life and the earth and the spirit, our fellow travelers and our own souls have things to teach us, that it is important to connect our inner spiritual life with our living and serving out there. We need coherence. And we need to be touched beyond words by music and by poetry and by nature, by sacred or divine presence, and by one another in ways that embody joy and beauty and mercy and peace. We gather in service to the common good. We gather for the sake of the world that we have been given and the one we wish to love into being. We alone can't fix the world with all its wars and its conflicts and its burning climate and its dying ecosystems, its threatening dictators, and its hateful fundamentalisms, of which we are not free, by the way. But we can serve our neighbors. We can make and serve meals. We can furnish apartments and welcome refugees. We can hold a sacred space for people to share their stories of grief or trauma. We can give dignity and names to the memories of those murdered for being trans, for being truly who they are. We can learn to live more gently and sustainably on this earth. And we can bring our weight to bear on bending the moral arc of the universe towards justice. That's it. That's our purpose. That's our mission. So having articulated all that and the kind of community that we're inviting people into, the last key, the last step to living love through the practice of invitation is summarized well by African-American Zen Buddhist priest Angel Kyodo Williams Sensei. It's the community's job to figure out how we stretch into the so-called margins to broaden our understanding and the ability to be inclusive. Inclusivity is not how do we make you part of who we are, but how do we become more part of who you are. If we truly want to grow our invitation and welcome new people and younger people and a diversity of peoples, we need to be ready to listen to their stories, their needs, their expectations, to what feeds their souls. And it might be different. It will be different from what we are comfortable with. We need to accept their invitation to change, to stretch ourselves toward the full possibilities of our own invitation to live into the spiritual discipline of love.